I can. I don't have internet access.
No, just that,
You want to see?
well, everybody ordered.
All right. We're making it.
Oh,
You just later on. But you've already heard, but.
I sent it to him. I didn't print out, but I sent it to him. Just let me know.
Yeah, a lot better than John.
What did we use? What about this?
Jams up against the seat. Oops. Yeah. You are. Okay. Yep. Okay. Good, Jim. Right?
and I used to know that that was, I don't think anybody should do that, and I like them both as they are.
Right? Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
That'll work.
Fire's still 100% Fire rescue separate. Fire's still all off. For fire, yeah, we've been pretty, compared to a lot of surrounding. Always use more. Got a lot of young guys. A lot of them are career firefighters.
Yes. To the folks on the GoToMeeting, the camera's having a little bit of a problem. If you go to YouTube, you can see him here, but you can still talk back on the audio through GoToMeeting. Okey doke. Sorry for that distortion. The audio's working on GoToMeeting, but the camera's not. You can go to YouTube and see the agenda and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, she's here. All right, text him.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman, that was before the.
Yeah, well, that's the way it works.
All right.
That's right.
Y'all ready? Yes, ma'am. Sir, you good down there? Yeah, it's fine. He'll be here. We got a quorum. I'd like to call the Board of Supervisors meeting to order. As always, let's start with the pledge and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Ms. Hoffman?
I hereby move to permit Carter Yao to attend the September 22nd, 2022 meeting of the Madison County Board of Supervisors remotely pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3708.1 and Section 2.4F of the bylaws of Madison County. Carter Yao is unable to attend the meeting currently scheduled for September 27th, 2022 in person because of a personal health matter. This is the first meeting Carter has been unable to attend in person this calendar year.
Second.
All right, motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Welcome to the meeting, Mr. Yao.
I abstain from the vote, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. All right, we do have a quorum. We do need to adopt an agenda. Anything we need to add to the agenda this afternoon? Mr. Weekly?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Yao. As always, public comment. Public comment. We're gonna have a lot of opportunities tonight for public comment, but anybody have general public comment? I don't know what you're doing, Livingston. What are you doing? There you go. Are people commenting on the online platforms? Yeah, that's a bummer. All right. We'll do multiple more times. We do have a consent agenda. We have minutes from 9/13/22 and supplemental appropriation number 34. And that's the school grants. It's 2 grants with a total of $50,721.75. Mr. Weekly, anything to add on those?
No, sir.
All right. Questions, comments, thoughts, motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to present the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
I like the hand raising, Cardi. I can see it. All right. We do have 2 public hearings tonight. First public hearing is for Resolution 2022-13, which is an abandonment of 0.21 mile segment of Clore Road. Mr. Weekly, Mr. Gregg, who would like to speak about this?
I can take it if you like,
Please.
Mr. Gregg. A while back, VDOT approached us about an abandonment needing to take place. I will say it's more the formal paperwork to take place. They made us aware of a 0.21 mile segment of Clore Road that has basically not been used, according to their records, at least since 1969. I'm going to put a map up that was behind the resolution just to give the board and the general public an idea. If you're looking up where the 2 yellow pins are located, the blue segment in between the 2 yellow pins is the portion that would be abandoned. This it's basically right there. If you've driven to the back of Clore Road, past the intersection of Clore Road and River Road, it dead ends at a residence. And right before that driveway, the road used to do a dog leg to the left and actually come out to the Hebron Lutheran Church. Again, this hasn't been used since 1969. Reached out to the immediate homeowner. They have no objection. Sean has posted this at the courthouse. There's been no objection there. But it does require a public hearing. And should you wish to vote tonight, I have prepared a resolution that Mr. Gregg has reviewed and approved. Mr. Gregg, is there anything you wish to add, sir?
No, Mr. Weasley, the only comment I would make though is that this was advertised, we sent all the notices out, and we heard nothing. There's a somewhat peculiar Virginia code section, 33.2-9009, pertaining to this. We would have to have gone to court had you object, because we had no objection to the procedure.
Thank you. Comments to Mr. Weekly, Mr. Gregg about this from the board? All right, I open the public hearing about the abandonment of Route 637 Clore Road. Anybody want to comment about the abandonment of 0.21 miles?
I'll bring the map back up.
All right. Livingston, how are we doing? Nothing? Yeah, that's a bummer. All right, the public hearing is closed on the abandonment of Clore Road. I know we've got it down the way. Is there any reason why we can't just?
No, sir.
proceed?
If you want to act now or do it during new
Already
business,
put out.
your preference.
We have a resolution 2022-13, which is of support of abandoning a portion of Route 637 Clore Road.
And Mr. Chairman, just for a point of reference, I made it clear that the abandonment, if you look at that second whereas, it will begin at 1103. That's that driveway I referenced as shown on the map. So that's your 0.21 mile segment.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, and I dare us to edit my own work publicly, if we can delete of support and so that it reads the resolution for abandoning a portion of Route 637.
All right.
Of course, the only one abandoning is not.
Yeah.
You're actually.
All right, so we've modified it at this point. The motion would have to be a modification of resolution 2022-13.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt resolution 2022-13 with the amendment of removing the word support or of the two words of support from the resolution title.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. All right, here we go. We're going to do this again. I do not believe this is the last time we're going to do this. This is a public hearing for the request of Greene County to withdraw from RSA. Apparently, our last time we were outside of the advertising requirements, and now we are doing it again. What am I missing here? What other information needs to be conveyed?
I believe that is all that is necessary. We attempted to approve Greene County withdrawal at a meeting several months ago. Because of the Independence Day holiday, we have been advertising deadline, so we have provided petition notice. This is consistent with what we've been doing with Greene County and Greene County withdrawal from that advance service call. By voting on the resolution favorably, we will be in
Thank you. All right, questions for Mr. Weekly, Mr. Gregg? All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
we did not put a resolution
No.
number, whether I opted and put a date on it because I wanted this to reflect this is the exact resolutions that have been passed by Greene and Orange counties. So those resolutions match up. That's why there's a date versus a resolution number.
The title of this resolution is Resolution of the Board of Supervisors of Madison County, Virginia, pursuant to Virginia Code Section 15.2-5112D, approving the withdrawal and transition agreement and the withdrawal of Greene County from the RSA, September 27th, 2022. Further comments from the board? To the public. To the public. Yes, ma'am.
Phoebe, I'm Clarissa Berry, and I live in the town of Madison. It's really more of a comment, I guess, and a question to RSA that as we move forward with the separation, the two offices for RSA are at Lake of the Woods and at Standardsville, Ruckersville. Lake of the Woods is about 45 minutes away. So that's a pretty big jump for anyone that needs to go and take care of business in person. So I would be very interested to hear about the plans for what that will look like, what a slimmed down RSA and how it will better serve the customers, and then also any impacts that it will have on the price of my water and sewer, since I do pay that every month. Thank you.
Just to address the location, we have a $1 lease on the facility, the office in the $1 lease on the facility in Greene County till December 2023, Tim. And so that location will not change for the next year. But I know RSA currently is looking for a new facility that is in Madison County. Costs are yet unknown.
Well, and I appreciate that those aren't answers necessarily that the board would have. So I would hope that RSA could address them at an appropriate time in the future.
Yes, ma'am. Other public comment? Other public comment? Livingston? Nothing. All right, public comment is closed and the public hearing is closed. We do have this resolution with September 27th, 2022. Y'all want to act on it or wait? All right, let's do it.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve resolution of the Board of Supervisors in Madison County, Virginia pursuant to Virginia Code 15.2-5112D, approving the withdrawal and transition agreement and the withdrawal of Greene County from the RSA September 27th, 2022.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Yao votes aye as well. All right. Moving right along. No old business this afternoon. And we've knocked out the first two of new business. Mr. Weekly, tell us about Rappahannock Juvenile Detention Center and that we need to make a full motion to appoint you instead of just a head nod. Is that right?
Yes, sir. We went back and reviewed the tape. You appointed me by consensus when I spoke to the superintendent of the Juvenile Detention Center. They requested that that be an action of the board. So a simple motion to do so as on the screen would suffice.
Are we sure he is qualified to represent us? What do y'all want to do?
The answer is no.
What would y'all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint the county administrator to the RJDC committee in replacement of Supervisor Hoffman.
Second.
All right, motion made, and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Mr. Yao is aye as well. All right, flying. Joint CIP facility condition assessment. Mr. Weekly?
Yes, sir. Before I get into my staff report, I did invite Dr. Stacy Timmons from Madison County Public Schools. Mr. Timmons, if y'all have not gotten to know him by now, well qualified. We're glad to have him here in Madison County. He is the new Director of Facilities, I believe is the title. So several years ago, both the county and the Madison County Public Schools decided to do a joint CIP study, basically a facility conditions assessment. That goes back to, I believe, 2012. Staff believes on both sides, for the county and the schools, that another joint CIP facilities condition assessment is needed. However, looking at the one that was done in 2012, which was more narrative driven, there's still some good information in that document, but what this new provider has above a traditional architect and engineering services, they will put cost. So part of the indexing, you can see a cost of a facility, whether you do no maintenance or you do adjustments along the way. So there is some computer software that goes along with this that you can update regularly. It will also tie into a computer maintenance management software system should the county ever move that direction. The school, I believe, has a platform, or there is a CMMS platform for schools that this would tie in as well. So it would be benefit to both staff as they go through and update the project. We have vetted it on our side as far as how to procure this, being that it is not a traditional architect and engineering service. They have that specialty component, as I mentioned, with the software tracking the projects, as well as they are listed on the EVA website, lowercase e, capital VA. That's the state's website that has vetted, I guess you can say, and approved contract sources. The name of the company that we are bringing to you tonight is Bureau Veritas. They performed a demo and a presentation to the joint CIP committee members. Your two members is Supervisor Jackson and Supervisor Yao, or Chair and Vice Chairman, excuse me. We believe they're the best fit. If you want me to go through the presentation, I can. I'll bring up one screen.
Y'all want us to go through the presentation or not? Has everybody been through it? I think let's hear what Mr. Weekly finishes, and then we'll go to Mr. Timmons in the back and see what he has to say. Dr. Timmons, I guess. Yeah, you earned it. Please.
So on the screen, I just want to give you at least some of the meat that was in that lengthy proposal. Is kind of the charts and the data that you would comprise. I don't know if I can bring this in a little closer for you, but you can actually see cost. Our last indexing, it gave you more of a ranking. So on a 0 to 75 scale, it told you your roofing is this or your electrical is that. But there really wasn't values to that. And needs by year undressed, I mentioned there's adjustments. So if you do not address facilities over time, you'll see where you track. Or for example, we have an ongoing project at the Estes House. We would capture that roof replacement, and then that would obviously push down some of your facilities cost of that facility. So this is why we like the service provider over your traditional A&E services of a facility condition assessment. The proposals you have before you tonight are for both the schools and the county. They are broken out separately, but the request tonight would be for the county to fund both proposals. We have reviewed from the finance team level of where this funding can come from. We have adequate funding, two sources. The board budgeted roughly $60,000 in your master CIP. We've identified a remaining $16,000 to cover the rest of this proposal out of the capital line item for IT. The total cost is a little over $75,000, actually $75,403. That's why we're rounding up to $76,000. So we have the funding. We believe it meets the sole source criteria. We believe they're a good service provider. I do not have direct working or past work experience with them, but I did invite Dr. Timmons here tonight, who has direct experience if you wish to ask any questions or pick his brain on working with Bureau Veritas.
Dr. Timmons, anything to add to this? Yes, please.
Mr. Weekly, Mr. Chair, and members of the board, thank you for allowing me to come tonight. I would just say that I've used this company before. They're very reputable. I was pleased with the end products. They looked at about 12 facilities for me. The detail in the reports is amazing. It's going to provide the county and the school division with a great document to lead us into the future through capital projects, and really gives you a good roadmap to use in the future. And what I like about this, as Mr. Weekly talked about, is that it's an ongoing tool. You can pay for this once, and when we do service or repairs or replacements, we update that information in the database, And it's a living document. It's not like you have to go back and do this again in 5 years and it's outdated. So I would recommend the company wholeheartedly. I've worked with Jeff Fox as my main contact and have been very pleased with their products.
Questions for either of these gentlemen? I really do. I think that the big one here is that this is like the comp plan to some degree. It's a living document, and it makes it so that it's something that we can work off of continually and try to do some preventative maintenance, not in foolish ways, but based on our facilities needs. The other side, which is what we're doing currently. I mean, we're doing Clarissa's roof right now. That was kind of at a whim. What? Yeah, county. Also, everybody needs. Absolutely. Clarissa's birthday today, so everybody remember and wish her happy birthday. You get a roof. But we do, it seems like we're doing these things all the time, and we're just kind of doing them because we need to do them to keep our facilities up to what they need to be. Hopefully this will kind of take away some of that reactionary type of crisis mode, which seems to be what we've been operating in. I think it's a good deal all the way across the board. And Dr. Timmons speaking highly of them, and then their presentation of how detail oriented they've gotten is pretty good. What would Mr. Yao? Do you have anything to say about this?
Yeah, I have one question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you? I have one question for Dr. Timmons and my question is, going forward, what kind of expertise? I mean, so Veritas is going to provide some experts in evaluating these facilities. Going forward, then that's going to kind of fall on us as a county and the school system. How much expertise do we need to be able to keep it a living document like I think it's going to be?
So, Mr. Yao, it's a great question. It's just going to require some time from someone dedicated that will keep up with projects. And it's simply a matter of you've put in a new chiller and the replacement cost was this, and the database that they give you is going to actually make those calculations for you. They have great follow-up. If I've been able to call them for the past 2 years until I came to Madison, the projects they did for me, and gave us great follow-up. But it's really not an expertise. It's more of you have to remember when a project is done or you replace a compressor or a fan motor. It's those details you have to put in to make sure that that's happening.
Thank you.
Same type of maintenance that you do on a facility. You got to do it with this system. You need to keep on top of it so it's not just a waste of $75K.
Yes, sir. It's only as good as you keep it.
Absolutely. What do y'all want to do here?
If you choose to make a motion, Mr. Chairman,
go.
I would just add to the language I have up there, or however you choose, just to not only authorize me to execute the agreements, but in the amount of $76,000 as specified from our capital budget.
Yes, sir. What do y'all think up here?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Jonathan we authorize Jonathan to enter into the joint CIP agreement at the cost of $76,000.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Mr. Yao?
All right.
There you go.
All right.
Gotcha. All right. All right. I'm going to turn this over to RSA.
Yep.
RSA permit modification. Mr. Whit,
May I
please start. Go ahead,
just
Mr. Weakley.
a quick. I talked to the chairman about it before, so I'm not trying to steal your thunder. What I want to mention is just a little overview of where the county has been on rezoning and what you have before you tonight. Been hearing some things out in the community, and we just feel it's best at a public meeting to kind of talk about the facts and where we're at. So you have a permit modification request for the wastewater treatment plant, which we'll talk about in a potential upgrade of capacity for that treatment plant. Far as relationship of what the county is allowing to develop or development in that corridor are two different things. So recently, so we're talking about the area on Fishback Road primarily. Letters went out as required by the statute. Anytime there's a permit modification request to DEQ, they're required to send a mailing out to residents that are a half a mile upstream of the outfall. So that's the discharge of the treatment plant, and a half a mile downstream. That's why only a select few received that mailing because of that protocol. The rezoning that's occurred, the only rezoning that has come through the Planning Commission and ultimately reviewed and approved by the Board of Supervisors, two areas as you primarily turn on the Fishback Road. Recently, there was a brick residential home that's still there, but that was rezoned to B1. So you've seen some activity out there. You've seen a dumpster and some cleanup. So B1, we don't know what the developer would put there. I'll get back to availability in a moment. The next parcel, which I believe is a little over 30 some acres, is directly across from the Presbyterian Church, and it's primarily trees right now. What has been approved for rezoning is mini storage units in the back of that property. At the middle of that property, some mix between single family and potential apartments. And then there's a commercial pad up front. Again, unknown what that commercial pad would be able to support. That developer and or landowner owns roughly 22 or 23 EDUs now. So by right, they can use those EDUs for that project, but that will limit that project for what they can do based on their sewer needs. Water is not in that area, so that would be something they would have to explore. I wanted to mention that because I've heard other parcels, and of course there is a sign, there's a construction company getting ready to build a home or so right behind the church. But that was a 3-acre piece of property just sold. That has nothing to do with strip malls or hundreds of houses. So that's what the board has heard, I believe, within the past year to 18 months. As far as relations to the submitted permit modification to the wastewater treatment plant, that's based on RSA's desire to upgrade their facility. They could handle those 22 or 23 EDUs now. So those two matters are separate. I just wanted to make that clear to the public here tonight. For those who are viewing at home, they're unrelated. So hopefully that'll set some context for tonight's meeting. Mr. Chairman, just for the board and the members and the audience and those online know who we have here with us tonight. We're thankful RSA has come out. We have our General Manager, Mr. Tim Clemens. Forgive me, Trace, your title? Director of Administration. We have Mr. Geralds, who handles operations. They have brought Mr. Rob Mangrum with them from Mangrum Engineering to speak to the project. He's done a few things for RSA, whether it's permit modifications or PER reports. We have Miss Allison Thompson, who's the permit writer for this treatment plant, many years at DEQ. So if you have any technical questions, she can speak to that. We want to give the board the opportunity to have an informational meeting as well as the general public, but you're hearing this, but what is this permit request about? So Mr. Chairman, with that being said, if you wish to turn it over to Mr. Clemens, and then you can choose how you want to have any public dialogue.
Mr. Chairman, apologies. It's on the overhead. I don't think it applies to what we're talking about. Is there something that doesn't apply to this?
I believe Tim and RSA have a
Yeah, I'm going to bring the PowerPoint up.
Thank you. We do. Mr. Chairman, good evening, board members. I am Tim Clemens, General Manager for Rapidan Service Authority. And Jonathan's right, we're here totally independent of any issues as far as zoning or rezoning goes. What we've got is a treatment plant that's 48 years old that needs to be replaced. It's been there many, many years. The town built it many years ago. And it's an old technology and it's wearing out. It's that simple. So Mr. Mangrum has worked with us to do the PER.
and design on a new plant. As part of that, we thought it was prudent to look at expanding the plant size-wise. In my 23 years with RSA, we've had to tell anybody that calls in Madison, there's no sewer capacity. You know, it's just gone. It's been eaten up years ago. And so we thought it would be prudent to at least look at enlarging the plant. So we've done that. As part of that, we have had to submit to DEQ permit modification so that she could look at all the aspects that enlarging that plant would be. And so this evening, we simply wanted to come in, thank you for your time, and share with you what we're looking at. So with that, I'm going to let David Gerald do a presentation. David's our Director of Operations, and he will share with you, and then we will answer or attempt to answer any questions you might have.
All right. I'll just repeat our thanks for having us today. Hope we can clear up maybe some misconceptions and just give a little more detail about the permit modification, some history on the facility, and also our plans, our vision for moving forward. So Jonathan, if you go to the next slide. So the plant was constructed in 1974 by the town of Madison. It was ultimately handed over to RSA in the early 90s, and we upgraded the facility. It's currently rated for 80,000 gallons per day capacity, which I added a note here. That's 32% of what the water plant is rated at. So if we were to think about that side of the equation, we're good on that front. Currently have 92 residential customers and 84 non-residential customers. And that's just isolated to the town of Madison. If we communicate nothing else tonight, I would like it to be that upgrades are certainly necessary. So the last significant upgrade was nearly 30 years ago. With that, you have degradation of materials. So there's steel tanks buried. Those don't last forever. Generally speaking, outdated technology, things have come a long way since that plant was constructed. Next, flow capacity. So we're required to satisfy a minimum of a 10-year planning horizon. So as we get into thinking about upgrading the facility, replacing the facility, we have to expand to a certain point just to satisfy this requirement. And like Tim said, there's currently no available capacity for new connections. I've added a couple of data points here just to put in context where we are in terms of fulfilling that existing flow capacity limit. So in 2020, we were at 70,000 gallons per day average throughput, which puts us at 87% of the permitted capacity. And you'll see that next note, after 3 consecutive months at 95%, that's when DEQ is going to require us to start planning and start scheduling on how we're going to handle these flows and how we're going to upgrade the plant. So we've gotten ahead of that, which I think everyone would agree is a smart thing to do. And then just another data point there, 28% of daily flows from 2018 to June of 22 exceeded 80,000 gallons. So we're getting into that, you could say a danger zone, and we're trying to think ahead. Treatment capacity, we'll get into this a little bit more later, and it goes back to that outdated technology point. So the current treatment process is not designed to do the level of nutrient removal that DEQ requires in the modern day. So a new facility would meet that new standard and would meet some new limits that come along with this next permit renewal. So this next slide, I want to skip to that third point first and say the permit modification is simply a requirement to move forward with these grant applications that we've submitted. So nothing can be approved on the grant funding until this permit modification goes through. Because the limits that are set in this permit basically dictate how much money we're entitled to and what percentage of the project can be covered by grant funding. And of course, our priority is to get as much covered with grants as possible. Going back up, so what we've requested with the permit modification at the existing outfall point, so that's where we're discharging today. And the current permit is for 80,000 gallons. We're requesting that continue on into the next permit modification, as well as adding a new flow tier at 160,000. So that represents that plant expansion that we have talked about. The new outfall point, so as part of this planning process, we're also considering discharging to a different location on the Robinson River. So you'll see a few slides later that ultimately our discharge now makes it to the Robinson. This will be a more direct path straight to the Robinson with enforcement. So next slide. This is just kind of an overview of the current facility, current discharge point, and where we're projecting the future discharge point to be. Next slide. So the current treatment plant site is certainly a tight location. It's been a challenge to come up with a design that fits in that current location, but the proposed improvements are contained within the existing site. I'm not sure about the exact acreage, but as you can see, it is a very small site, and we're not proposing that we extend outside of that. Next slide. All right, so before I get into any more details about those two discharge locations, I really like to emphasize all these points. So as we already covered, the plant must be replaced, regardless of any future growth plans, simply due to its age, and also, upcoming regulations that we would not be able to meet with this existing plant. It must be replaced. As I just said, the plant will be upgraded within its current footprint. And then getting into another factor that kind of ties into why you decide to upgrade to 160 versus 80. Just thinking about the economy of scale, on this, with a small facility like this. There's a certain amount of costs that are just sunk costs. They're relatively fixed. And based on our engineers' estimates, replacing the facility with an 80,000 gallon per day facility would be roughly 85% of the cost if we were to upgrade to the proposed 160,000 gallon per day facility. So when you're talking about that size of difference, you're really just sizing tanks bigger and sizing pumps bigger and sizing blowers bigger. Next point is upgraded plant will be subject to additional regulations. So like I mentioned earlier, nutrient removal is not possible with the existing plant. And then limits generally become more stringent as discharge volume increases. And that kind of goes to the concern about the quality of effluent that we would be discharging. The more that we're discharging, generally, the tighter the restrictions get from DEQ. Next slide. Again, this is just kind of some aerial shots of the existing gravity main. So it's about a half-mile gravity main from the plant to the current discharge site. And then I've also shown Little Dark Run on its path to the Robinson. Next slide. So our intention is to remain at this outfall for the foreseeable future. But I'll add a caveat to that. It really depends on what shows up in the permit modification. Like I said earlier, our goal is to maximize the grant funding. And while it's our intention to push off this moving to the different outfall to a later date, it really will depend on what we see in this permit modification. And I've added a little point there about the minimum flow in Little Dark Run is assumed to be 0. In a drought condition, you have fairly low flow conditions. So the stringent regulations that show up in our permit reflect that. Move to the next slide. Again, I've added an overview just showing the projected path of this new force main and a potential discharge point right there next to Route 29. Next slide. Let's see. And my last slide here is just talking again about the Robinson River outfall, which is that second proposed outfall location. So eventually we may outgrow the current outfall location, and there's some advantages to moving to the Robinson. One of the large ones is you have a much higher flow of water in the Robinson, and that dilution offsets anything that you may be discharging. And the final point we really want to drive home is getting these permit numbers for that outfall location help us plan for the future, and also help us plan for how much grant funding we can expect. So that wraps up the presentation. I think we'll probably take some questions, and I might hand it off to the relevant party. I guess first, Allison, if you had any particular comments you wanted to share at this point, or if you just want to wait and see if any questions arise.
I can wait to see if there's any questions that anybody has that are specific to.
Okay. Who from the board has questions? Anybody have any questions? Please, go ahead.
Do you guys have a service district map? Just like this is the area we serve, where this may expand?
Are you asking?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
This plant primarily serves just the town of Madison. Okay, that's what it was built for initially, and that's what it serves. What it could serve in the future will partially be decided by this board. You guys control building permits and zoning, and if you allow that, we just want to be prepared to provide service.
Okay. The other question was, how many EDUs would this add to the system?
400.
400 more,
Yep.
or total?
400 total. No,
Okay.
400 more. There's 400 on the existing plant. Okay, we figured 200 gallons per day, an 80,000 gallon plant.
Okay.
That's 400 EDUs that went with the original plant.
Okay.
By doubling it, it would create 400 more.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there a mechanism in place at this point to prevent one or two developers from coming in and buying up all the EDUs?
Our policy has always been to sell EDUs on a first come, first served basis. We've never had anyone want to come in and buy, 400, particularly here in the town of Madison. Usually we get a request for one or two or that sort of thing. So we do not have a formal policy that would prohibit it. That'd be something we'd have to work with this board on. And that's our goal, is to work with the Madison County Board of Supervisors on moving forward.
Thank you. All right, other questions? Mr. Yao, you have any questions with the RSA staff?
Yeah, I've got, first of all, can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So, Mr. Clemens, I think, since I am on the RSA board, I would like to see the RSA board address EDUs. I don't consider them a commodity. I consider them being something that when development gets approved by this board, i.e. the Madison County Board, that that's the time when they would be able to go out and and purchase EDUs. I don't think it should be traded like a commodity. That's now. My first question was the permit modification. Could you or David explain where that process is timing wise? And well, I guess that's what I want to know. Where is that?
All right, let me go back to your first thing, Cardi, before we go further on the issue of commodity. EDUs, from our standpoint, are not supposed to be a commodity. When you buy an EDU, it is designated to a piece of property. Okay, we don't just sell a bucket of 100 or 200. You have to define what property that EDU is going to be for, and that's the only place it can be used. You can't sell them. If you want to sell it, the only one that can buy it back is RSA. And we would buy it for whatever you paid for it. But that's it. They're not for sale on the open market, and they're not to be used that way. It's always been that way. So I hope that answers that first question. I'll let David address where we're at on the process right now.
As far as where we are in that process, that's going to be probably a better question for DEQ. We don't have a draft permit at this point, but I think it's moved along pretty far.
Yeah, Allison Thompson from DEQ. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. They have submitted their application. We have done the initial review. The application for the modification is complete. We've done our notifications to our additional agencies that we coordinate with, and I am in the process of drafting the permit right now. It will probably be another 2 to 3 weeks before a draft permit is ready for RSA's review. They will be given 2 to 3 weeks to review it, make comments on the draft, and then once they are satisfied and we've addressed any of their comments, we will go to public notice. It is a 30-day public comment period. It will get published in a local newspaper for that 30 days. I will accept public comment, and depending on whether or not I receive any comments during the comment period, we either, if we don't receive any public interest, we then finalize the permit and it becomes effective once the public comment period is complete. If we receive significant public comment that they have concerns about water quality, concerns like that, we don't address, just so everyone knows, we do not address development. Our permits do not convey any development rights. We only address the water quality that the facility must meet for whatever size facility that they are. And they are planning for an expansion, so I'm putting the expansion tier in the permit, but it does not convey any development rights. But if we have a public hearing, we have very specific policies and procedures we follow for public hearings, and that would extend the modification probably another 3 to 4 months, because we would coordinate a hearing. We would have another public notice period that we would let everyone know that we were going to hold a public hearing. We would hold the hearing and then address any comments then, and then finalize the modification. So on the best case, if we don't have a hearing, you're probably looking at another 60 days to finalize the modification. If not, it could be up to 6 months more.
What else you got, Mr. Yao?
Thank you. So I guess either David or Ms. Thompson. So take me from the so let's say we get the permit modification and go through the public hearing. Everything's fine. Now, take me from that to the day we can start construction and make this thing happen. I guess DEQ has an enormous role between permit modification and sticking shovels in the ground and start modifying our plant.
Well, once the facility has the authorization for a specific size facility, they have to then, hire an engineer who will design the facility in accordance with the sewage collection and treatment regulation. And then they will apply for an application or certificate to construct. They submit that to the regional office. The engineer and owner assure us that it's been designed in accordance with those SCAT regulations. And once we approve that certificate to construct, they can then go forward to construct the facility. How long it takes them to get to the point of asking for that application for the CTC, that all depends on, whether they have the funding in place, if they've asked for grants, how long the engineering takes. Once they have that CTC, they can go forth as soon as they are ready. But I've seen projects, get delayed because of, they put out requests for proposals. The proposals come out a lot higher than what they were originally thought because of supply chain issues, contractor issues. It could take years for a new sewage treatment plant to be constructed.
And DEQ would be working hand in hand with the Virginia Department of Health through this process?
The Virginia Department of Health does not have any involvement in the sewage treatment plant construction. They are more involved on the drinking water side with the development and construction of water treatment plants. We do provide copies of the applications and the final permits to VDH so that they are aware of projects, but they do not get involved in the construction or the approval process.
All right, thank you.
All right, I'm gonna ask just a real dumb question. I'm going back through your slides a couple times. At this point, you all are sticking with the triangle-shaped piece of property that we have right now. There's no talk about moving to a new location. And
there's no discussion about moving at this point. The PER that we've put together exclusively looks at this site.
But you bring up the outflow on the Robinson River, which is basically about 1.5 miles from your current site.
Mhm.
That would be through a forced main.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
We would have to pump it.
Yes, sir. All right. You got any questions down there? Comments? You seem to know something about this business.
I do not manage the service authority, so.
All right.
No, the only thing I want to add for the public, and they hit on it, RSA hit on it earlier. If you're a visual person, I know folks may be concerned about economic development. 90% I'm using that number. I'm not saying RSA, so don't quote them. It's the town of Madison. There's small customers outside of that town border, which is basically the public schools. So it took about 50 years to get where we're at today. So I think if the general public is conducive or would like to see some controlled growth, just think of it in that direction, that what you currently have, which is the town of Madison and the schools, Food Line Shopping Center, is what is currently being supported by the plant you see, the location you see on the screen. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. We're not required to do it by any means, but does anybody in the public have any questions, comments, thoughts? Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Development on Fishback Road, we've done before the sewer plant has been improved.
With the EDUs,
yeah.
with the EDUs that are currently available on those properties, I would assume the answer is yes. If they do not have the EDUs, then they always have the option, if the space is available, to have a regular septic system.
Right.
Yeah.
That's correct.
There you go.
And there's one developer on Fishback that does have EDUs already.
Yes.
And it's had it for 20 years.
Yes, ma'am.
So this seems like a lot of information. So I live off of Little Dark Run, and I know we're told all these things are really safe. I tend to think that there's got to be some things that are leaching out that are going to be getting through filters and things, and doubling a capacity with an outflow in my backyard does concern me. So, that is a concern that we have living right off here. And then you had mentioned, I'm sorry, I do not know your name.
My name is Jonathan Weekly, the
Jonathan.
county administrator.
Okay, I'm Mary DiMartino. You mentioned it took like 50 years to get here. And I understand things being eroded and having to be replaced to keep things up so that we don't have stuff leaching into our water supplies. But when I moved here 18 years ago, we were told that Madison had things in place to prevent growth so that we would not have all these homes, storage units, and apartments that will literally be now in our backyard. Because when we bought our property, we were told that this is residential and agricultural, and it will stay that way. And Madison is very hard on building. That has been rezoned. All this is changing. And a lot of us have concerns with what all of this is going to do to affect us, not just with the water quality, but when we mentioned Fishback Road, I am tempted to get, and I know this is not part of this, but when you talked about the growth, and to sit out there with a cell phone camera, because every day, every time I'm out there, and I'm not out there much, semi trucks are blowing through that red light, vehicles are blowing through that red light. I went to the police department and I said, and I shared my concerns, and I was told, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. And I said, don't you have to have the growth that Madison County is talking about, don't you have to have proper police, fire, and facilities? He said, yes, we do. And we don't have it and we're scared. And I said, why don't you get off River Road and police yourself up here? And they said, no, we don't even have the help to do that. And there are times my neighbors here have witnessed going through, and I look this way, and having to stop halfway through an intersection as cars are blowing through. This is daily. So when you want to add all these houses that will come off Fishback Road, just say 80 houses at 2.5 cars a house, that's 200 extra cars coming off Fishback Road that it can't handle. So I have a lot of concerns with the water facility. I don't know, is this going to leach into my well with the traffic? I mean, there's just a lot of concerns that seems like it's all going to be affected, so those are my.
The last, 3 meetings we've had, we've addressed with VDOT, and we are continuing to address with VDOT at Mr. Jewett's insistence, and he's 100% right, about the traffic light at Fishback and how poorly it is timed. Even though the fine engineers from VDOT are saying differently, we will keep harassing the heck out of them and get them to change it eventually.
They told me when I contacted VDOT, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine.
That they do not police traffic lights, and pretty much they were not willing to do anything.
Yeah.
And I brought that to attention, I think, at the meeting that we had about the concerns, and thank you for trying to be on them. But I was told, oh, well.
We're a little more insistent. We will be addressing this with up the ladder here very shortly.
So I guess we would joke because when we moved here, there'd be 7 cars at a traffic light. Now it's just coming and coming because all of the development further up, and this isn't going to stop. So we have a lot of concerns, I guess, where the location of all this is going to be taking place on a traffic light and a narrow road that's already highly stressed. So, and can you guys address how this will affect our water, wells, and all that? I mean, I know we're told that everything is going to be filtered out, but in my mind, I'm thinking, how on earth can all the medications, chemotherapies, drugs, all these things, high blood pressure meds, antibiotics, hormones, get filtered out and not honestly get leached into the water and the wells and those type of things?
I think from RSA's perspective, our priority is to always meet the regulations. There's certain constituents that might not be regulated yet, but the key point for us is that a new plant would be able to treat the water at a higher level.
High enough to remove those concerns?
There are a few facilities in Virginia that meet those. I mean, I could name on 2 fingers the number of facilities in the state of Virginia that could remove those type of facilities in the country.
So the answer is no. So those things will be leached into the.
You are not the only sewage treatment plant. I mean, most of the sewage treatment plants in Virginia cannot remove those constituents because, unfortunately, there are thousands and thousands of those compounds And the research is not there yet to determine what is the best way to remove them. And that is a nationwide issue, not just a local issue. And we are waiting for EPA's research to assist us in developing the nationwide regulations, and then they will get filtered down to the states, and they will be implemented when they are adopted, when they become available. But facilities like this one, I mean, we do have monitoring for all the priority pollutants that are regulated. They do have to meet all of the water quality standards that have been adopted naturally. And they also, as they expand, will have to do toxicity testing, which gets at a lot of those compounds that we don't have specific limits for at this time. But we look at how whole effluent toxicity looks at how all of those compounds affect like water fleas and the more sensitive species. So they will be doing that type of testing. So we don't test for those things specifically right now, but we do look at them holistically doing that type of testing.
The reason, and just an example, the reason I ask about the facility and where it actually was going, for years sitting up here, we've always heard that if we were to redo the sewer treatment plant, which has been a limiter to growth in Madison County for a period of time, one aspect of that, and the planning commission, the comp plan, there's a bunch of different factors. But the comment from RSA continually for the last 10 years has been, when we go and we update this plant, we're going to have to move locations based on the amount of outflow that they have. The thing that has come up both with RSA and then also the other night with the Kriglersville deal with the soil scientist that was in the room was that the technology has improved drastically compared to what we're working off of right now. And the comment, I think, has come out a couple different times saying, well, it's super, super clean water that's going in as discharge. It's something that is much better than what we are working off of currently. And then improvement on this facility, I'm absolutely shocked, and I shouldn't say, but I'm absolutely shocked that we're allowed to operate with. But we're moving around the right path. It seems like there's some funding mechanisms in place, both through DEQ and through USDA, that will allow us to come up to the modern technology of sewage treatment. Mr. Jewett, you have something to say?
Yeah, I want to reiterate my frustrations with VDOT that address your concerns. All of us go through that traffic light, and I actually think it's getting faster, to be honest with you. But we've gotten explanations from VDOT that are, to me, unfathomable. They did come out and check the light, and they didn't check the timing between the perpendicular directions. They checked the timing between yellow light to red light in one direction, and that's not what we asked them to do. And then we get an explanation that they can't modify the timing there because it would mess up the entire 29 corridors light changing cycle. And, you know, we get the runaround. And at the last VDOT presentation here, you know, we insisted that if there was no recourse within VDOT's policy, then we wanted to look at an appeal process and escalate this to where we need to do to fix that light. It's ridiculous. Common sense. I've gone into the intersection and had to stop because there was a semi that ran it and ended up parked halfway in through it. I mean, we've all had that experience. So it's frustrating, believe me, but we haven't dropped the ball on that.
Well, that's one of our biggest concerns with adding more buildings and having more traffic frequency.
Yes, ma'am. All right, Ms. Purrier, I assume you're standing. Could you have some questions? Pass it back to Colt, would you? Yeah, we need the recording side.
All right. Mr. Chairman, thank you. I've got a couple of questions, if I may. Looking at the map, I own at least 1/3, if not half, of the Little Dark Run that's depicted on the map there. I have a number of concerns about the impact of the water treatment plant on the Little Dark Run. I'm not sure if Joe Daniels' plan for that intersection at Fishback Road with the storage lockers and the apartment units and the strip mall antedate the plan for RSA, or if those are on parallel tracks by coincidence. A question that I would have, if the proposal by Mr. Daniel for the development there on Fishback Road and Route 29 is for 35 apartments. It's my understanding from these gentlemen from RSA that the water treatment plant needs to be expanded so that there can be any more EDUs for development. And the proposal that I've seen submitted identifies 35 apartment units. I've also heard the number 46. Are there currently the additional EDUs available to support a 35-unit apartment building complex there at the vicinity of 29 and Fishback Road?
That property already owns 23.
Okay, they own 23, and you all have the capacity at the current water treatment plant
That is
for that.
factored in there. Those EDUs are factored in.
Okay,
Just as the ones that other people have already put.
okay.
Years ago.
And that, as an example, Madison County owns 16 EDUs. Mr. Daniels, I understand, owns the most of them at this point. Is he the largest owner of them? He's got a significant, a handful of people own the things.
Three or four people that
That's
have
right.
some that are already
Yes,
factored into the existing plan.
yes, sir.
But the 34 that Mr. Daniel owns are, you said, site-specific to these apartment units that he's building. Is that correct?
And didn't you say 23?
I think it's.
There you go,
Okay.
not 34.
See, the thing is, when you get to looking at apartments, it's not always one for them.
That's correct.
what we would have to wait and see what they-
Yes, sir.
Okay, so one EDU does not serve one apartment.
No, not
Okay, could serve two?
possible.
Okay,
Depending on the size of the apartment.
okay. And the number of people who live in the
You
apartment?
live in the side of the apartment.
Okay. Second question, with a current outflow of 80,000 gallons per day, it's kind of mind-boggling, but to double that to 160,000 gallons, I'm looking at a dam bursting and flowing down the Little Dark Run in terms of the effect on my property and my bridge where I cross the Little Dark Run. Do we have any way to project what 160,000 gallons a day going into the Little Dark Run is going to look like?
So an 80,000 gallon per day plant has a 6-inch diameter pipe. So you would probably treat your diameter for 160.
My math would say 12 inches, but that may
But
not be.
necessarily.
Okay,
The present outfall would be, it's gonna take, so, I mean, and when you see, you think that 160 is a lot, but, I mean, I permit plants at 64 million gallons per day. I mean, I understand that this is Madison County that, and, you would never expect to see a treatment plant that size, but a 6-inch pipe, you usually take up about half the capacity of that, like, when you discharge. So,
You're talking about a continuous discharge, so roughly 100 gallons.
okay. But there's no way to project what 160,000 gallons is going to look like.
It'll be roughly 100 gallons.
100 gallons a minute for 160,000 gallons per day. Okay, all right. And then, is there a requirement for an environmental impact study? This lady's asked a question about what, ma'am, you referred to as constituents. But is there a requirement for an environmental impact study to double the size of the output?
environmental impact studies have to do with developing property and, like someone when you develop property, they have to make sure that they look at historic resources, endangered species, that has to do with land development, not environmental impact studies, they look at all of the environmental permitting. My permitting only looks what they have to meet in order to protect the water quality.
Okay. And whether it's 80,000 gallons or 160,000 gallons, you're saying that the water quality requirements for the Commonwealth of Virginia will they'll be met.
The limits will be derived to protect the
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Sorry, we'll get to you. I apologize.
I stole the microphone. I apologize.
It's working that way.
Again, I'm Clarissa Berry, and I'm from the town of Madison. And I mean, I share everyone else's concerns, but I also live in the town of Madison, and I can do math. And it seems like it would make my bill be a little bit more gentler if the division had more people involved. I also look up and down Main Street and know that there are buildings that cannot be developed or redeveloped because there are no EDUs available for those buildings. I've had long conversations with property owners about where they might be able to get EDUs and who they might be able to talk to. That's a problem. If we've already chosen to have our density in our county in one area, but there's no way to have density, that kind of puts the county in a catch-22. And then you're looking to build houses in A1, C1 instead of in R1, R2, R3. Same with commercial. So best of luck to you all.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, one more question if I may. What is the timing on increasing the size of the water treatment plant?
Yes. The timing, part of it's dependent on permit issue. There, we're looking at, grant funding for a good portion. So we will not even be able to start on that road until we see the permit installed. Probably 18 months. So we do not expect that grant funding to necessarily cover all the costs. So there will be money that has to be found.
From the county.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yep. So just to touch
And
on,
if you'll identify yourself.
sorry, I'm Joseph Pelletier.
Yes, sir.
If we were to go back one screen, I'm adjacent to the property. Bobby Jenkins here is back to his property line. Actually runs on the creek, right where that arrow is. And that's a creek there, not a run. I mean, the water flow that you're talking about increasing too is going to turn the creek into a river of, clean runoff, to be polite. But in the same instance, it's going to obviously add to erosion factors on the creek side. And to her point, there's not a lot of people that are on the city tax side of things. So I know that they're carrying a large burden when it comes to this. But we're certainly on this side of 29 to be outside of that city district. And now it feels like everything's getting dumped on our side of the road there in the rural areas. So there's a large amount of concern in the development around our properties that we're going to be zoned into a city zone when we're obviously on an agricultural side of things. And this is all coming off the backside of resettlement, which everybody knows the history there. Everybody there was resettled from the mountains in order to be put down there so they didn't have to deal with the eminent domain up on the mountain. So now we're in a situation where we feel like we're getting pushed further away in order to be able to maintain our properties. It's a situation where I don't feel like there's been enough data collected and research as far as the flowing of the extra, discharge, as you all say. The discharge point that you're pointing at there is further upstream than the discharge point is currently, correct? If I recall correctly, that there was some additional tanks that were placed in southeast of that point, which is, again, the backside of Mr. Jenkins' property. Is there not tanks underground there where the discharges are coming off of? into the creek side? Okay. All right. Above and beyond that, I would definitely like to see some more research in regards to what impact it will have on the creek that's there, because it is adjacent to our properties there. So, thank you for that.
My name is Jennifer Mazzaris. I live on Little Dark Run. My property backs up to that off of Fishback in the Fox Ridge subdivision. I missed the first part of the meeting, so excuse me if I ask something that's already been discussed. I have a lot of concerns. The first one being that we're assuming we have no idea how much how much this is going to cost. We don't know how much grant money we're going to get. We don't know these EDUs, the development that it could lead to. Lived in Madison for 20 years. I came from northern New Jersey to escape what's going on around that area, obviously. I lived in the town of Madison when I first moved here, and I had the town water. Living here for the last 18 years, you have a sewage plant that has been operating. Mr. Weaver apparently owns a bunch, and he's down by Food Lion of these EDUs. So there are still ones floating out there. For the EDUs, when this sewage plant goes over, we don't know what's going to be left over to be a tax burden to the residents, especially in a time of inflation, tax bills. We are typically more of an elderly community. So I'm concerned about the tax burden that's going to be put on us, number one. Number two, the traffic on that Fishback Road and the light, it starts at the light. We've been told that when this development comes, it's going to come across Fishback Road. It's not going to be an exit off of 29 to access. So you are going to have that increased traffic. Right now, we don't have the resources in this town to provide. We don't have the police, the fire, again, even to get fire engines back there, road widening, things like that. I see dollar signs with that. I have concerns with the blind spot on that road as you're coming up over the hill and the amount of potential accidents that have happened there, the speed on that road. And of note, just because, even the light at VDOT, right? Nobody listens and can't be done. But remember what happened down at Forest Lakes when the tractor trailer killed the girl going to school that morning? How many years ago? Suddenly they took down all of those hills at that traffic light. So are we going to wait for something bad to happen before somebody does something? That's the traffic light. Coming around that bend, road conditions, when there's slightest slick or ice or anything like that, you're sliding down, and I mean, it's not safe. If you add all those EDUs, you're asking for the development, which I'm not completely against, but right, if you're going to add all of those housing units, okay, what are our public schools at right now? Because the last time I checked, the science teachers are teaching down in the middle school from the high school because they don't have enough teachers. We just renovated the primary school space, because kids were in trailers. I think there's still some kids in trailers at the high school. And we can't say, I'm sorry, you can't tell me that the 1 to 2 bedroom apartments are only going to be elderly or they won't have children. And in terms of your water output, okay, fine, they're 2 bedroom apartments. Doesn't mean 7 people, 8 people aren't going to live in there. So we have to acknowledge those things. Now, my other concern is a couple of years ago, my property was never a flood zone, but yet I got something from the county a couple of years ago because of that flooding, kind of what you said, we had all that excess water come down. And I looked out my window and I'm kind of up on a hill. And I mean, the amount of flooding that happened in the lower part of my property, and then I got a tax rezoning that part of my property is now zoned a flood zone. So now we're talking about dumping more water in there. How's that going to happen? I mean,
You didn't get rezoned. That's a FEMA. That's federal.
well, so what
and
wasn't a
the
flood zone is
yeah.
now a flood zone.
Yes, ma'am. And they did that all over the county in every tributary and every river, and they expanded it greatly.
Right. So now we're potentially adding more into that. So issues, and the erosion is a huge issue because I've seen even in the 18 years, the creek and the stuff that comes through and how it's chipping away and things like that. I have concerns because I had to jump through hoops because the septic system failed. There was like 3 systems in this Fox Ridge, and I had to put an alternative system in, and all the hoops I had to jump through. And I'm wondering, if the same things are going to be done, because I couldn't put it just anywhere. I had one spot on my 9 acres I could put it because I had Little Dark Run and the other creek. But now we're talking about potentially dumping. And again, if it's kind of like the ideal is to go down into the Robinson River. But if we can't get that, we're just going to do it and put it into the Little Dark Run. So I'm a little confused even about that. It's like, if we're talking about growth, if we're talking about EDUs that are going to allow for the town of Madison to have business and all of this other stuff, I don't, it just, the whole thing doesn't make sense to me. And I think it's like when you drive up and down 29 to Charlottesville, we all see the traffic. Okay, I commute to UVA to work. I see it in the 18 years. It's incredible. And all I keep asking myself is, why don't they expand the road? Why are they building North Point? Why did they expand Forest Lakes? And nobody built the road. And this is kind of the same thing. We're going to fix this plant, add the EDUs, allow for construction, but we're not looking at that Fishback Road for safety. We're not looking at those plans. We're not thinking down the road. If we now put 30 units or however many housing apartments, what's going to be the tax on our police force, our fire department, our schools? And all I see is a larger tax bill coming my way.
Other comments? Yes, ma'am.
Jenny Simmons. I also live off Little Dark Run in the Fox Ridge subdivision. I agree with everything that everybody has said here. As you can see here, I have 2 little children that love to play in that creek. And and so I'm concerned also about my property erosion, my land erosion up there. When we get a heavy rainfall, that creek goes over its banks. And so I can only imagine what a heavy rainfall is going to do with the added output, how that's going to affect my actual property and the erosion problems. So when that creek overflows its banks, I mean, I have corn on the cob, like all through my property there, because it's taken wherever the corn is, it's somewhere over there. It comes down, washes down, and lands on my property. So I have all kinds of things that come and wash down on my creek bed there. The other thing that I'm concerned about is if we put in this new septic system, which it sounds like it's needed, but I just feel like the investors that bought that land, that are wanting to develop that land, which by the way, don't even live here, live in Pennsylvania. That really bothers me, that we have outside investors that are now wanting to invest in my backyard and they don't even live here. They're not even from here. And they're waiting to see what that sewage plant can hold before they decide how much to build and what they can build. So I think you made a comment earlier that these issues are unrelated, but they are related, because they're waiting on how much that sewage treatment plant can sustain. So, if you're going to add all this new stuff, it's just going to encourage the investors to build more. So that concerns me greatly. And I'm originally from Montana, and I love this town. I love this country, small town. I don't want to see it wind up like Ruckersville or Charlottesville. I want to keep it small. And, with everything going on with the cities moving to rural areas, I'm really concerned about us being flooded from DC and Maryland and wherever else. I would like to keep this community small.
Just what you were saying too, with the 30 days, wherever this goes, and public comment they were talking about, the only reason we knew about this is because we got a letter. And I think to say, oh, we're going to put it in a local newspaper, Madison Eagle, is that still in print? Who reads the news? But so how many people get it though and read it? So if you're going to have a public comment, a true public comment or area, I get robocalls from the school, from the county, for silver alerts, all that. This should be a robocall so the maximum people know about it, because putting it in a newspaper today, the majority of people don't read a newspaper. It's social media or direct contact. So if this goes forward where there is another public comment, it needs to be put out to the public in every way that we can think about to really give people the chance to come up and speak against this.
All right. All right. Any other public comment? All right. Thank you all for.
Very courteous, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. All right. Grab the remote or the microphone, please.
He said it wasn't no tanks in the field on Fishback Road. On the creek line.
You talking about the discharge point? or the
There you
wastewater
go.
treatment
Yeah.
plant itself? Which one
I
you
know it's
talking
3 down through there.
about? Manhole?
Well, it's water and stuff running into the tanks.
There's manholes that go across that field. That's what you're talking
Where's the discharges from that, from the creek?
about. The treatment plant, which is off Fishback Road, discharges by gravity through that farm field, over the little rock, runs through maybe, I don't know, 1,000 feet. That's not a mile. 2,500 feet of pipe. And there's 3 or 4 manholes across that field. That's what you're talking
All right.
Talk with me afterwards so I can have a better understanding where you're talking about.
There a diagram of which charge pipe with water unit that shows all the water flow?
What, a flow schematic? I don't have it with me, but if you want to give me an address or whatever, or email, if you.
I prefer to see it on like a Madison government site.
I don't have a flow schematic with me.
All right. Thank you all. Appreciate the input. Board, do we have any comments on this at this point? All right. Thank you all. All right. Moving on. Christmas luncheon. You proposed the 9th. Ms. Hoffman says it's not enough time to get into the Christmas spirit. We have a we there you go.
We were just looking at, and I should have brought this to you early September. We were looking at folks who maybe normally take off around that time, is why we moved it up.
I think we did it last year on the 17th.
Yeah, I'm not sure last year. I could check with, well, the fire chief just left. I know the 9th was good. Brian had that reserved, but if, okay,
I mean, it just seems 9th is awfully early for a Christmas party.
okay. We will move that.
All right, we're going to do it on the 15th. Everybody good on the 15th? You Christmas oriented? That's the way to be. We haven't even gotten to Halloween.
You want Thursday the 15th or Friday the 16th? Is there?
I think the 15th.
Okay.
All right. And Ms. Hoffman's done a phenomenal job putting together something to eat, making it seem like it's an official type of deal. You have other it is. It looks very nice. You do a great job. You don't bother anybody. That's even better. What you got another alternative?
Thursday the 15th.
Sure.
I just want to make sure that, because it's really on a Friday, so I want to make sure that I have everything on my.
Thursday. Do y'all have it on? Do you have it on Thursday? Do you have it on Thursday the 15th around lunchtime?
We make it work no matter what. Whatever suits the county.
All right, there you go. Thursday the 15th.
And I'll get with her and book the date.
Okay.
Tell her to take the night
If you
off.
want to book the date, and what we're going to do is grab some of the same folks. We'll get the band back together, planning folks from last year, and we'll think about some other creative activities or giveways
You do
or.
that.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll take care of the food. You do-
which I funded a lot last
You do
year.
the
So don't
fun
think about your tax dollars. Those came out of my wallet.
Are you
But
people good with this down there? You don't want to participate, Mr. Jewett?
And I'm fine, whatever.
Yeah, all right,
All
there
right.
you go.
You make
All
deviled
right.
eggs or something.
15th, everybody's gonna be jolly. We're gonna eat well, and that's that. Does that work for you?
yes, sir.
Very good. Moving on. Fiber hut for Firefly, Mr. Weekly.
Yes, sir. We were contacted by Firefly. They initially looked at placing their huts that they need for deployment. And these huts are similar to a telecom or just like a radio tower. You have like a 12 by 24 structure, and there are other things, generator and so forth, that's needed. So they roughly need about 50 feet by 50 feet square, if you will, which is similar to the tower site at Hoover Ridge if you've been out there. We're trying to identify a location on Hoover Ridge if the board is amenable to that. They had looked at originally the REC substation on Fairground Road, but that does not provide adequate space. They thought they can then shift it to the REC location in Wolftown area. They are out of space there, so they have shifted to a request to the county. If the board is okay with me working with Firefly, first is just getting your consensus on working with them and trying to locate it on Fairground, or I should say Hoover Ridge, and bring back any type of proposed agreement, of course, getting it across the desk of Sean to review. But we're at the earlier stages of, they notified us, we need a location. We said, oh, we own property on Fairground. So is the board comfortable with finding a location on Hoover Ridge? I'm thinking the cornfield or the soy field right now, maybe that front corner as you cross past on Fairground where we've already developed a lot of the play fields, just past, I guess that is Little Dark Run. We're not discharging into it. It would be the next front corner there of the property. So it would be tucked away. There's already a culvert in that would allow you into that property. So I'm not sure if you would really have any use of that front corner anyway.
Seems like Jonathan has a plan. Does anybody have any problem with his plan?
Not at all.
Mr. Yao, you got any problem with Jonathan's plan? Mr. Yao's nodding
Yeah,
saying no.
sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, it's a good plan. We all agree with you. Do that. Anything else on that one? All right, moving on. Information and correspondence, ERP project update.
Yes, sir. Ms. Warren and I spoke with Tom Char today. Tom Char is our project manager for the ERP. That project was approved by the board a couple years ago. It involves Avinity, which deals with land records and taxes for the Commissioner of Revenue and Treasurer's Office. There's Laserfish, which is more of a records management type of system. And then Tyler Munis, which is heavily involved in our financial and payroll. So he will give you an update. It's been a little bit, so we're going to try to do these quarterly so the Board of Supervisors and the general public can track that project, which you invested in, and where we're at in the process. So had a good meeting today with Mr. Char, and he will be narrowing down that presentation. I believe we should be able to view that at the end of the week to make any tweaks for your October 11th meeting. He will be in person. So I'll send the presentation out early in case you have some additional questions. We can kind of build around it. Next item, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
it's your pleasure.
roll on, please.
Social Security Officer, Social Security, excuse me, School Security Officer grant.
Not there yet.
So the state actually allows for a school resource officer or a school security officer. The schools have made the request of the county to apply for this grant. I did speak with the sheriff, just make sure he was informed, and okay, he is. He's had a recent retirement at the SRO position and kind of concerned when they could staff that. Want to be clear that the SSO does not have the authority such as a law enforcement officer, which is an SRO. The schools would apply for this, would be a school position. Where's the county involvement? Well, the county had to sign off as the project administrator, but these funds would come from the state, flow through the county coffers over to the schools. Do I have that correct, Ms. Warren, am I missing anything like that? So this has been recently submitted. I cannot recall the timeline for as potential award, but we'll bring that back to the board should the school be successful and be awarded this grant. This is a one-time coverage from the state. I did point that out to the school, just as SROs came to the county as 100% year one. You just have to look at that accumulative effect of funding year after year. So information
Good
there.
Questions on that one? Good. All right, PRA grant.
PRA grant update. I was hoping Mr. Barry would be here to give a little more overview. But essentially, the grant we applied for through VLCF, and there was a VOF component. There was a change in guidelines from the original pre-file, which is where you file to see if your project is even, reaches a good score to even move forward to filing the application. After filing the application, I think it was around August, I think it was late August or early September, we got a call back from another person tied to that grant program that they would only fund the easement value. We asked all the normal questions. How did we go from project, construction, water feature, playground to now easement? But that's all they're willing to cover. So unless the board decides otherwise, I'm going to end pursuit of this grant because if they're just giving you the value of the easement, that's going to fall quite short of what this project could be. The project's PER just kicked off earlier this week. It's about a 90-day window or less for them to complete that. And at that time, you will actually have some rough estimates of what that project would cost, known as the Hoover Ridge Outdoor Recreation Center. So if the board is okay, we'll drop pursuit of the grant. If you wish for me to continue, we will do that.
Everybody good with this? All right. Good with that. Everybody's nodding their head yes. Move on. Pursue other grants. Get us some money. All right. Anything else?
That's all for information, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Hoffman has your closed session citation.
We got to do this public comment again. Public comment.
I will be so fast.
All right.
Two things. One, we have started with our drug court. We have one person total, and that one person is from Madison County. And they essentially started the program before they started the program, which, if you'll remember, is kind of the only reason I agreed to do drug court, is that I wanted the treatment to be available to people in Madison. So we are very excited about that, hopeful for more to come. And then number two is Thursday, October 13th at 6 p.m. right here is the, I guess it's the Victim Witness Commonwealth Attorneys. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so if you are available, we would certainly love for you to come. Mr. Jewett is already dressed appropriately in his purple. And
What are you doing?
Well, so in the past, we have honored attorneys and law enforcement officers and folks in the community who have helped out. Jennifer let it slip who a few of our people are, and so we're kind of broadening the net a little bit. So not just the usual suspects in terms of kind of county employees.
These are real weird adjectives on these people. Usual suspects, drop the net. All right, try it.
Mr. Jackson,
You're going to give some awards to some people?
And my beautiful roof is going on,
That's
which
good.
means that it's basically like working in a drum kit.
Yeah.
Very exciting. But hey, we got a basement, so we can hide out there. We are not complaining. We are very excited.
Excellent.
That's all I have.
Good. Happy birthday. Other public comment. We got a bunch on there. Just Cardi and me. That's it. That's a real bummer. All right.
So would you prefer me to call Mr. Yao when we get in closed session so we can drop the line?
We'll call him on this thing.
Okay.
You hear that? We'll call you at your house.
And y'all call me on my home phone.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do.
On my landline.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Closed session, Ms. Hoffman.
I move that the board convene in a closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A1 for personnel, 2.2-3711A7 for consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation. 2.2-3711A29 for discussion of the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, including interviewers of bidders, offers, and discussion of the terms or scope of such contract, where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Mr. Yao, we'll call you here in a minute. He votes aye too. Thank you all very much.